Have you ever finished eating and wondered why you still want more food? If so, I'm here to tell you today that you're definitely not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. Overeating is usually a habit and nervous system issue and not a discipline issue. So today I'm going to share 11 daily habits that have helped me rewire my hunger and made eating normal amounts feel natural and easy again. So there's this famous saying, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a beggar. And even modern science agrees that this is the best way to nourish our body because in the morning, right after waking up, cortisol starts to rise. And we can decrease cortisol levels by eating food because it senses to our body that we are getting nourishment, we are getting food, so cortisol levels drop again, meaning that we are feeling more calm, more safe, more relaxed. And that way, our vagus nerve, which is kind of the phone line between our stomach and our brain, can now function properly and can now send fullness signals to our brain. And personally, I used to eat breakfast super big when I was a teenager. So I would wake up at 6:30 and at 7 I would have this queen's feast every morning. And seriously, I felt so amazing doing that. And at one point, the intermittent fasting hype started coming up. People were talking about don't eat till 12. Skip breakfast, it's not that important. I started doing that, and that's where the real overeating and the binge eating began. And at one point, I realized this is clearly not working, so I started to eat bigger breakfasts again. And it can be a little bit difficult, especially if you need to get up early for work, for example, and you're running late, then why make time to have breakfast? Let's just grab something on the way, or let's just have something in lunch break. That's kind of a mindset I started to develop over time, and then, paired with all this brainwashing that's happening around skipping breakfast. I mean, personally, I think intermittent, I like to call it feasting, is amazing for the body to give our digestive system a rest. But personally, I think it's much more effective to do that rather towards the last few hours before sleeping. I can give you an example here. The last 2 nights I came back quite late from being out and about, and I ate dinner later, and all of a sudden it wasn't as easy for me to fall asleep anymore. And when our circadian rhythm is out of whack, then that affects our ghrelin, our hunger hormones, all that stuff. So the first habit definitely is to eat a big breakfast. And also, personally, I think ideally starting with fruit, because that way you're giving your body clean fuel. Because if you have a very heavy fatty breakfast, that's not really going to help with the cortisol levels. The cortisol levels are going to drop by you giving your brain and your body, your cells, glucose. So fruit is amazing because it's full of simple carbohydrates that your body turns into glucose, which is the cleanest form of energy. So I love starting with a nice banana smoothie or melon or coconut water, oranges, whatever fruit I have on hand. And that way your body is also going to get filled up with some fiber, with some nutrients. And this is really going to help. Like if you just take one thing away from this video, this is going to help you so much to prevent those binges and that overeating later in the day. The second habit is to plan ahead. I'm not saying you have to structure everything perfectly. And at the moment, for me personally, I've dialed in my routine with eating so well that I don't plan ahead that much anymore. I really just go more with the flow. But if I know it's going to be a really busy day, there's not going to be much time and space for food, I do like to plan, because the thing is, when we have to make a lot of decisions during the day, then we are going to experience something called decision fatigue when it comes to more minor, less important decisions, because your brain only has so much capacity for making informed decisions, and it will use that for the things that are really important. So if you have a busy job where you need to make a lot of decisions, then it can be really helpful to lay out the evening before the different meals you're going to have, or make a notes app on your phone where you just write the things down, or have a piece of paper where you write it down, whatever kind of way you like of planning. For me, especially when working full-time, that was something that was so helpful, to have something I can look forward to the next day, and to also know that's what I'm going to have, to kind of send that intention into the next day. And then it's clear thing for me to do that. And also, it reduces the risk to go to something that's unhealthy or to overeat, because there's always going to be enough. And you can then focus your decisions, your attention, your brain capacity and energy on the things that really matter. The third habit is to go outside as much as you can into nature, and also absorb daylight, and if you can, sunlight. Because this, first of all, is going to help so much with the circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm hugely impacts our hormone levels. Ghrelin, which is responsible for our hunger, our appetite, and leptin, which gives our body the signal we're good, we're full, we've had enough food. So when we go outside, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So we have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic is really for feeling calm, relaxed, and being in that mode of I'm good. And in that state, our body is way more easily able to register our hunger signals. Because as I mentioned earlier, we have that phone line, you can imagine it, which is the vagus nerve between our gut and our brain. And when we are relaxed, then our gut can tell our brain, I've had enough food. And the vagus nerve is much more easily able to send out those signals when we've had a relaxing morning, when we've had no stress, when we are in a chill vibe mode, versus when we're in stress, when we're in fight or flight. Then that connection, that phone line is going to be disturbed, and there's not going to be as much energy, as much blood flow to be able to send out those signals, because all the energy and the blood flow goes to the muscles, because that is more important right now. If we were in nature back in the days, it would be that mode of, okay, I need to run, I have something important to do. And that also brings me to the fourth habit, which is to have a slow morning. Because again, in the morning, cortisol is the highest, because we are getting out of bed. Our body wants us to get up, to move, to do things. So this is a really nice magic key that we can unlock to help our body to lower those cortisol levels, is by doing something very calm in the morning, whether that is stretching, which additionally has great impact on our nervous system, but also on the blood flow. And when there's more blood flow and circulation in the body, then our cells can register food is coming in. It has a positive impact on our insulin sensitivity and on our blood sugar levels. But also, when we have that slow morning, we are turning on the parasympathetic nervous system. And again, the connection line, the phone line between the gut and the brain can be louder and more clear. And that also brings me to the next one, and that is to also have some sort of spiritual practice. Personally, I don't like to call it mindfulness, because we're emptying our mind. But mindfulness, awareness, and present moment awareness is really the key to relax our body and to have the energy be distributed in a way that's efficient. Because when we're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, then our body needs a lot of energy. So it's going to send out all these signals to our brain, I need a lot of food. But we're not really burning all that energy that our body thinks we are going to need, because most of the stress is just happening internally. It's just emotional stress, which then later on can lead to binge eating, emotional eating. So having some sort of ritual or routine, whether that is meditation, whether that is a short prayer in the morning, or journaling, or doing some light stretching or yoga. Something that really brings you into this present moment. It could even be dancing or singing or making music. It's so helpful. And yeah, for me, it's been so hugely beneficial to have these small little things throughout the day that recenter me and that remind me of what's really important in life. And that way I have a clear direction and it's much easier to make healthy food choices. And then also when you are in that state of present moment awareness, when you are in the now and you're centered and rooted here, then when you've had enough food, you just notice it more clearly and you also have the discipline to get off the table and to say, okay, I've had enough and I know next meal I'm going to have something again, and then I can, refuel when it's time to refuel. But for now, I have enough food and I can continue going. But I wouldn't just say that it is a mental thing. I think it's definitely also a physical thing. So we definitely also need to work on the insulin sensitivity and the blood sugar regulation, because that hugely affects our ghrelin, the hunger hormones, and the leptin hormones. And then also making sure we always have enough carbohydrates in the tank. And the next habit is something that you've probably heard many times, but I thought I can't make a video about overeating and not talk about drinking water, because often we mistake hunger and thirst. We think we're hungry, but actually we're thirsty. And yeah, if you drink enough water, you're always making sure you're hydrated and your body will be able to sense, okay, is it real hunger right now? And then you can go ahead and eat something. And then also the 7th habit is to chew the food properly. And that is so important, because when we chew the food properly and we really create the saliva, enzymes, hormones that signal our body we're full are going to be distributed much more efficiently. Our vagus nerve is going to be able to send those signals in time, and we have time for our stomach receptors to also sense the fullness in the belly. And here it also helps to have higher volume meals, because we don't just want the satiation from the calories, but we also want the satiation from the volume. That's why, for example, starting the day with fruit is so awesome for preventing overeating throughout the day, because you are filling those stomach receptors. And some people though complain that, they're eating all this fruit, they're feeling full, but they still eat more to the point where it hurts. And I think here it's important to look more deeply and see, why do you think that you need to eat till it hurts? Because for sure it can be something physical where your body literally is lacking nutrition. Maybe you're going a little bit too much overboard on the high water content foods. So if you're just eating lettuce and apples, let's say, yes, you can do it. I mean, we all know the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, has been known for doing apple islands and only eating apples. But it's definitely not the most sustainable thing to do. So combining the high water content foods with also calorie dense foods, especially if they're coming from carbohydrates, we don't want to go overboard on the fat, because if we eat too much fat, then that, creates this balance in the blood sugar levels. Our cells can no longer absorb and take in the sugar, the carbohydrates that we're eating, because everything is clogged up with fat. But a low-fat diet with a high carbohydrate content, not just the very low density calorie sources, but also the denser sources, and that combining that together, eating vegetables, for example, with something denser, is incredible and is going to allow you to have the satiation from the fullness. The stomach receptors are sensing, okay, we're good. The vagus nerve sends the signal to the brain, all right, let's stop. But if you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, if you're constantly stressed, if that phone line is disrupted, it can't send out those signals, then your brain will no longer be notified we've had enough. And then this is the moment where it starts to keep asking for more and more and more and more food. And then, for me personally, those were the times when I started to overeat and binge because there was so much stress and my body wasn't relaxed. So chewing, very, very important, but also breathing in through the nose while we're eating. Because I mentioned the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system, the one that's calm and regulated, is activated when we breathe through our nose, versus the sympathetic nervous system is activated when we breathe through our mouth. So when you breathe through your mouth while you're eating, not only are you swallowing a lot of air, which can create gas and bloating, but you're also going to be in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. Not exaggeratively speaking, it can just be slightly, but the more turned on the parasympathetic nervous system is, the better, right? So we want to have it be as strong as possible so we can hear those fullness signals as loud and clearly as possible. The next one is, again, more of a practical habit, and that is to food shop regularly. Maybe if you have a very full calendar and schedule, even plan it and schedule it in your calendar, or go with the flow, but definitely make it a habit and make it a routine to go food shopping at least once a week or twice a week, and stock up the kitchen on those days to make sure you have those healthy food options around. You have those high water content foods that make you really feel satiated, nourished, and have that sense of fullness in your belly, and have a lot of nutritious foods around that if you have a very high level of nutrition inside your body, it is less likely for you to go out and binge. Of course, it is also important to take into account the other things I'm mentioning here in this video, but definitely if you have all this healthy stuff around, you're naturally going to crave it a lot more. There has been a study done where people were putting buckets in the shopping carts where it said, this is how many vegetables the average person buys in the supermarket. And when they had those buckets in the shopping carts, people would start buying more vegetables or fruits. And when they didn't have them, it was less amount. So having that set up in the shopping cart affected the decisions of the people who went to the supermarket. So you can apply that same principle to yourself. If you have all this delicious fruit, if you have all these delicious vegetables in your fridge, on your counter, in your kitchen, then yeah, that's what you're gonna want. But if there's not that much around, if there's not that much stuff that really excites you, if there's not that much variety, then you're not going to be that likely to eat healthy, because where's the food that you're going to eat going to come from if it's not in your kitchen? You want something that's fast, available, and quick. So yeah, food shopping regularly and having that sense of certainty, of structure is really, really helpful. Again, also for the nervous system to be calm and relaxed and know there's always food coming, especially if you're like coming from a family, like in my generational history, there has been a lot of lack around food because, my grandparents, they grew up in the war. They didn't have enough food to eat back then. They always had to make sure that they literally had been starving. So we take on the trauma 7 generations before us. We take on all that trauma, and all of that is still stored in our line. So if your family comes from a family that has been growing up in post-war time or in wartime, then it's especially important that you always let your body know there's more than enough. There's always food around. We're good. We're safe. To have that sense of certainty. The next one is to slow down. I've already talked about spiritual practice, slow mornings, chewing, but even slowing down in general throughout the day, doing the tasks that are needed to be done. I mean, sure, some tasks need to get done fast, and we maybe have to consciously go into that little bit more of a stressful doer mode. But there are a lot of things that we can also do in a calm manner, but especially taking short moments, even before sitting down for the meal, to just take 3 breaths and calm down the body. Again, so we can strengthen the body in hearing all the signals, hearing the hunger signals especially, because if we don't listen to our hunger signals, then we're also not going to eat, and that's also going to lead to binge eating and all that stuff later. So for me, it's been so helpful. I love, before having a meal, to just sit down, even if it's just like 5 seconds of just quickly, taking a breath and saying thank you for the food. So hugely beneficial for, making healthy decisions around what and how much I'm eating. The 10th habit is to move, because we all still have the desire to also experience some resistance, to experience some healthy stress. I think stress is important. And I also believe that the reason why in our society we have so much stress, so many people having burnout, is because we're channeling the stress into the wrong things. We're not channeling the stress into things like movement, exercising, exerting our body, because where is the time and space to set aside? I think, I personally think half an hour a day is not enough time to do exercise. I think we need at least an hour of movement every day. But ideally, I feel my absolute best if I move 2 hours. And that's not intense movement, but that's just movement where, it could be literally a gentle walk or bike ride. It could be cycling to the supermarket. It could be doing gentle stretching, even still in bed after waking up. But I think movement, it has way too little space in our society, in our world right now. So I think it's so important to move, not only to exert our body, but also it calms down the body. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it all ties back to that phone line, that vagus nerve between the gut and the brain. We want to strengthen that as much as we can. We're strengthening that also by moving, by exercising, by being outside and using our body. But then also, movement helps with insulin sensitivity, blood sugar regulation. When our blood sugar is regulated, then we are feeling a sense of fullness. Our body can actually absorb the calories that we're eating, and then we're going to be full. Because if we are not absorbing the calories that we're eating, that's going to lead to overeating. So for me, when I started to exercise regularly, you'd think your hunger would go up because you're moving and you're exerting yourself so much. And it does go up if you're not eating enough sugar. I'm not talking about white table sugar. I'm talking about carbohydrates. Whatever form of carbohydrate you're eating, your body's going to turn into glucose, into sugar. So when you're having enough sugar, you aren't spiking your blood sugar if it can actually enter the cells. So when you move a lot, your body wants the carbohydrates, it wants the fuel because the tank is empty. So it is absorbing the calories, and then your blood sugar is regulated. Blood sugar spikes are happening when we're not actually absorbing all the fuel that's coming in because our tank is still full. But obviously, the food is still in the system. And obviously, our body still needs to eat. Like, it wants to eat. It's our design. We like to eat because it's a pleasure of life. But when we're not exerting ourselves, when we're not actually dumping that fuel or using it, then where's the fuel going to go? And now let's come to the last point, and that is to socialize, and to socialize in the right way. So when we hang out with people that support us, that see our potential, that believe in us, that love us unconditionally and accept us, then that is a form of nourishment. And when we're not getting that nourishment from human connection, then we're naturally going to look for that nourishment somewhere outside of ourselves. For example, food. So personally, I at one point realized when I was in that binge eating, overeating period, that there weren't really that many people in my close environment that really inspired me, that I really truly enjoyed being around. And that didn't have anything to do with the people. It had a lot to do with me too. Because some of the people that were in my life back then, I'm still close with, but something inside of me changed and I started to socialize with them in a different way where it was nourishing and doing it in a balanced way, because I've also had times where I was socializing way too much and there wasn't enough space for me to just be by myself. And I think that's also really important to process everything that's happening. So having that calm, steady, gentle balance between I'm socializing with the people that I really feel comfortable around, and I'm also having me time. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and kind of finding that center has always been the place that allowed me to really nourish my body in a very healthy and gentle way, where I'm eating and when I'm full, I'm stopping, and all that overeating stuff isn't really part of my life because I feel so nourished from the relationships with the people around me and also so nourished from the relationship with myself. If you now want to see what an experience at a 7-day raw food retreat was like, check out this video. And if you want to know how 15,000 bananas have changed my life, then click here.